Hello. We will continue with another selection from the corpus of early Arabic sources for West African history. Today's reading will be a short passage from Ibn Battuta's work, a 14th century Moroccan traveler who became a global trekker who visited the Empire of Mali as his last trip before returning back to Morocco. Today's selection will pertain to an amusing story about the poets reciting to the Sultan, basically referring to the griots or jelis who in Mande culture served as interpreters and poets and oral historians and scribes for the kings and prominent men. Let's begin. On the feast day, when Duga has finished his performance, the poets come. They are called Jula, of which the singular is jali. Each of them has enclosed himself within an effigy made of feathers, resembling a bird called shak, on which is fixed a head made of wood with a red beak, as though it were the head of a shak. They stand in front of the Sultan in this comical shape and recite their poems. I was told that their poetry was a kind of exhortation in which they say to the Sultan, "This Bambi on which you are sitting was sat upon by such and such a king, and of his good deeds were so and such a king, and of his good deeds were so and so. So you do good deeds which will be remembered after you." Then the chief of the poets mounts the steps of the Bambi and places his head in the lap of the Sultan. Then he mounts to the top of the Bambi and places his head on the Sultan's right shoulder, then upon his left shoulder, talking in their language. Then he descends. I was informed that this act was already old before Islam, and they had continued with it. In this short paragraph, Ibn Battuta describing the role of the griots at the court of the Emperor of Mali, the Mansa, we get an excellent first-hand account of how they actually performed, what they performed, and the antiquity of the practice, which predated Islam in the region by perhaps several centuries. It's interesting to think, too, of the costumes worn by the griots and other similarities with later Mande cultures, such as the similar bards and griots among the Bambara and other peoples of West Africa. While Ibn Battuta takes a rather condescending view of this aspect of Malian society and culture, and West African culture more generally and broadly speaking, it's actually quite an interesting account of how many of the cultural, political, and social foundations of the state of the Mali Empire were distinctly rooted in these practices, particularly the orality and the role of oral history in maintaining accounts of previous kings and what were considered great deeds and acts. He also references Duga, who was the primary interpreter and poet of the king, in this case Mansa Suleiman, who I believe was a brother of the famous Mansa Musa, who made the Hajj earlier, a few decades before Ibn Battuta visited West Africa. Well, we hope you enjoyed this reading of this short passage by Ibn Battuta, and we'll come back for more content pertinent to West African history. Thank you.